Hey, welcome along. Tuesday evening, so it's time to explore things relating to working with children, youth and families. So great to see you. If you're just tuning in for the first time, I'm Richard Moores, Children's Youth and Families Worker for Southside Uniting Church. As always, we want to acknowledge the first peoples of the land, traditional custodians for area around Southside, that is the Yagara and the Turrbal people. We continue to pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and pray for reconciliation between all peoples. Thanks for joining us. As always, if you've got any comments or questions, pop them in the chat. It takes a little while for me sometimes to see them, so if I don't answer straight away, just because it hasn't come up, what you're seeing is about 30 seconds delayed from what I'm saying, and then by the time the message comes up. So just hang in there, but please put your comments there. And as always, I've got my buddy here. It's in my bag from he was keeping dry getting home because it was a bit wet coming home. So, hey, how's it going, buddy? Hey, everybody. Hey, there's a message. Yeah, what's it say? Hi, Grover. Hi, Richard. Hey, Russell. It's good to see you again. Hey, Russell. Hope it's all going well. So, So put your comments there, put questions. If you think, hey, this stuff's good, other people need to do it, share it on your wall and let other people catch on to what we're talking about. Tell other people around the church to tune in. All the stuff's there. We'll try and start to put them over onto YouTube. So hopefully this is a way of us sharing where we're headed and what we're up to. We've been working through Rebooted, Reclaiming Youth Ministry for the Long Haul, a biblical framework. And so in this, Tim Goff looks through what are the biblical cores for youth ministry, and particularly tying that into various sections of the Bible. So he started with the Pentateuch, encouraging us that we need to surround our young people with the story of the Bible and to be teaching them everything. We need to, through the history books, disciple everyone. So be walking alongside the young people and helping them to do that and to grow. Last week we looked at the wisdom literature, and we need to connect authentically. And to deal with, there's struggles, there's mystery. Today, as if you've seen the title, Cultivate People, which is looking at the Psalms. Probably not a place you naturally turn to with young people, but hey, it's great material. And so he starts off particularly with that sense of the Psalms and music. And sometimes in church tradition, people have pulled away from music. But if you look at the Psalms, there's a number of them that talk about what instrument to use. And some of them we don't actually know what the instrument is. And some words in there we think, well, that might be a musical instruction, but we don't know what it means. But hey, so that sense of music is important, and the power of music. Music helps us to connect in ways and works in our emotions type stuff. So that importance of music with young people. And then he goes on to talk about full coverage, that we want to cover everything and try and look at various parts of life, and that the Psalms gives voice and expression to the fullness of the human life. So it's not just the good stuff, but it's the bad stuff as well. And he talks about it gives emotional expression. So it allows us to express how we're feeling and allows us to see people experiencing the same things. So he talks about that in the Psalms we have Psalms that express fear, beauty, gratitude, hope, longing, joy, stunned silence, grief and regret, desperation, confession, contentment, lament, fury, and anticipation. In the Psalms, we get this gamut of the emotions, which remind us that as church, we need to be spaces where we allow young people to express their emotions wherever they are. Sure, I've said before, Michael Frost, remember him saying while I was at college, he was one of our lecturers, and saying, so many times, it was Frosty said this, it was Ken, someone said it, you go into church, I'm sure it was Frosty, you go into church and it's like, it's a happy day, and you think, well, it's not really. Life's crud at the moment. Where do we allow those spaces for young people to do that? Where do we allow, particularly at the moment, that sense of lament of life's not great. So I know a few weeks ago when I was leading a service, started with the song Blessed Be Your Name, which actually apparently comes out of the London bombings many years ago. And that sense of lament and that struggle of blessed be your name, even in these dark times, even in the struggles, we're going to bless you and we'll get through these dark times. How do we allow that space for lament for our young people? And they're questioning, because they're going through this huge time of questioning. How do we allow that? So the Psalms allow this emotional spread. And he also points out it teaches truths. So as we see the Psalms, they teach us about things. And it's that important. Music helps us to learn. And so the Psalms teach us, which encourages us to think about, well, what music are we using? And what truths does the music teach? You know, we need to sometimes sit and look at what are hymns saying, because they're the things that are going to get stuck in people's head. Pretty sure I've been over this before in the John Bell story. The importance of what we sing. It teaches our theology. And so sometimes there's songs I go, ooh, not sure about that. I'll fess up. The one gets me at the moment is one King of Kings, and it talks about God has resurrected me, and I think, well, no, we will be resurrected, but we haven't been resurrected yet. That's something in the future. So do we sing songs that are just, well, it's a nice song, so it's cool, or do we actually pull them apart and go, what is the theology that we're singing? What are the important points? How do we do that? So we need to think about what is the music? What are the things that we are teaching our young people through what we sing and what we express? Then Tim Goff, through the Psalms, reminds us that it has great creativity, and how we're allowing that space for creativity for our young people. How do we allow them space to be creative in worship, to help to create and frame worship? A book my colleague in The Hunter, Rob Hanks, gave us was curating worship. And I know Jock's been reading it lately. I never got around to reading it, but I'm sure it's wonderful. But that sense of, we as worship leaders, do we lead the worship, or do we curate and allow people to, like an art gallery, to take in and take on worship and, in a sense, use it and play with it? And how do we allow that creativity for our young people? Not just how do they come and express their singing, but how do they come and express and be part of that framing and curating of the worship? And then how are we teaching through creative media? So how do we use all the wonderful resources that are out there to help us to teach the message that we have? How do we find clips from movies? How do we find different songs and things like that? So again, I've talked about, that's why I like playing different songs at the start of services, because it helps people to think about, oh, what's this I'm doing? And how does this connect with my everyday life? So things like that. How do we use video through the next few weeks? We're hoping that one of Esteban's kids is going to do some animation of the Bible readings for us. How do we do more of that? How do we get our young people involved in that and creative? He then goes on to talk about, we've talked about the importance of emotions, and he talks about, well, why do we have these young people that tend to be a bit moody? Here's a list of things about our young people. And I think this is really cool to remind ourselves of what young people are going through. So he says, they sit exponentially more exams than any other generation that has gone before them. So being tested so much. You think about all the standardized testing that goes on now, and we're studying and learning to test, and we keep getting tested. They're facing more of that than we did. They face unbearable pressure to perform from parents, teachers, counsellors, the media, the postman, the dog, themselves, their friends, and just about everyone else in the known universe. So there's all this pressure. Oh, and you've got to do well. You've got to get good grades, or your life will fall apart. No, it won't. They're constantly written off by the media as being hoodies and hooligans, while at the same time being told their exams are getting easier and all their choices are soft options. So the media keeps going, oh, look at these young people, they're all causing trouble and they should love it because life's so much easier for them. Well, no, it's not. That makes a lovely story for why we can look down on the young people, but it's not true. He says they move in about 10 to 15 distinct social circles, whereas the rest of us move in about 3 to 5. So youth culture is so diverse and that they're moving in all these circles. And while we sort of have our friends, we might have our work friends, our church friends, and our family, they've got all these different groups that they're part of. They're trying to, who am I in this group and who am I in that group? They're the target generation for cyberbullying, sexting culture, online predators, serious frapping, whatever that is, and the isolated wonders of being internet dependent. So they're online and they've got all these struggles and dangers out there that they've got to watch out for and that people are targeting them. That whole sense of cyberbullying that, we got bullied at school and went home and we got away from it. Their bullies can get them any time because they're always online. They're also the target generation for the vast majority of popular culture marketing, including gadgets, clothes, diets, sex, sportswear, music, TV, games, and everything else that will subculturally brand them by what they and their parents can't afford. So there's all this marketing going on and going, you got to buy this, you got to buy this, and if you don't buy that, you'll be out. It's a whole heap is aimed at young people. They don't have the luxury of independence, but live in constant fear of judgment of their appearance and lifestyle, over which they have little control. So we're living with mum and dad, we've got to do what we're told, but if I don't have the right stuff, I'm going to be judged by everyone else. They're growing up more in broken homes than any other generation before. They have very few places to discuss and manage their confusion and pain. So they're going through all this questioning. Where can we actually talk about it? Well, nowhere. They are far more likely to become pregnant, engaged in self-harm, commit suicide, take drugs, start smoking, view pornography, or drink underage than any other generation before. So those have always been struggles for young people. Statistics are even higher for the young people today than they were in the past. They're taught to treat adults who act sympathetically or compassionately towards them as potential dangers or threats. So that whole stranger danger. Are you just trying to groom me so that I'll, do something later on? That questioning of and that fear. What does that do for our young people when they're always, anytime someone's nice to me, there must be something behind this. They have less chance of getting a job after they leave university or college than any other generation before. They will work at least 15 jobs in their lives and will likely spend a considerable portion of their working life unemployed. So if you think about, from 20 to 60, 40 years or so, 15 jobs, you're changing every 2-3 years. What does that mean about stability of what they're going to face? They are living in poverty, have a fraction of the amount spent on them that adults living in poverty do. So adults get unemployment benefits and stuff like that. Our young people don't get as much stuff. They're told they must still go to university or college at a ridiculously high cost, with even less certainty of unemployment at the end. Third-level education for many is now simply an unavoidable and impractical luxury, but they are seen as second-rate without it. So you've got to go to university. But how am I going to afford it for many young people? As students at university and college right now are reporting a significant lack of value for money in their studies. So we put all this work in to get our studies, but what does it actually get us in the end? Hey, I got a BA, what does it get me? They have no vote, at least those under 18, and thus little sway in the decisions government make that is likely to affect their futures more than anyone else's. However, they can still join the army and be tried as adults in court. So they can't stand up and make a difference, but they get the repercussions of those decisions that are made. They're a convenient scapegoat in 2011 English riots, which were mostly participated in by over 18-year-olds, were blamed at the time almost exclusively on teenagers. So they're the people that are up to no good. Our media loves to focus on that. Probably said it before, I'm always interested in when older people talk about these young people who are destructive, and then in the next breath talk about how when they were young they used to blow up letterboxes with bungers, and you go, where's the difference there? It's too easy to blame our young and look down on our young people. They have to go through a huge amount of unstable and confusing bodily changes, evolutionary baggage aside, and they have a freedom of social and artistic expression that many adults long for. Thus, much of teenage expressionism is treated badly for, let's face it, sour grapes. So young people have these opportunities because of online to do all this expression, music and art and stuff like that, and it's looked down by, oh, that young people, they're no good, it's just wish-washy stuff. Basically because we're grumpy because we can't do it. So there's a whole heap of stuff that's going on for young people, and you could add to that list. That means, how are we providing them space to deal with all those emotions, that's the stuff that brings up? How do we allow creativity for them to unpack some of that baggage? So that's the importance of worship. And through worship, we try to build community. And he says, community doesn't just happen. It establishes itself slowly and purposefully through stages of evolution and growth. It needs to be carefully cultivated on a firm foundation of values and trained around the specific people within. Clubs just happen. You decide what they're going to be, open the doors, and the people who fit will stay. Setting up churches like clubs is one of the reasons behind the Western epidemic of church hopping. When one club starts to be not quite what one likes, one can simply leave and look for another. Families, however, don't work this way. So that sense of, how are we doing our church? Are we just setting up, going, okay, we want this sort of group of people, we'll set up this program. And they come along, and when we don't quite meet they go somewhere else. Or are we going, who have we got? And how do we build community? How do we build family amongst these people? And hopefully grow from there, so that they reach out to others and bring them into this community. That's the hope of the church. And that's going to be the more effective if we're building those relationships that then expand outwards, as opposed to we put on a program that people like. Hey, people like this sort of music, cool, have that every Sunday. And when that sort of music is no longer relevant, they'll go and find somewhere else. So we have this challenge of, how are we engaging our young people in worship? How are we helping them to create our worship? How are we helping them to expand, look through their emotions and what's going on for them? And so, as you know, at the end of each chapter, he has his little acronym of things that relate. And so today's youth worker, cultivate people and create community. So create is our acronym for today. So C is creativity is a gift. Embrace it in young people and give them room to express it. So we need to go, hey, our young people are creative, and are probably creative in ways that we might never have thought of. So they might go, hey, why don't we do this? And it's just like, because I've never thought of that. So how do we allow space for our young people to be creative, to express themselves, to do the things that they're just naturally good at? So creativity. Reach. Reach widely to give full coverage in how you teach and lead young people in formation. So how are we opening those doors so that everyone can experience and express those emotions that we have? That we're doing the lament as well as the celebration. And yes, we need both. Let's celebrate, but let's also, in those difficult times, let's lament. Let's walk alongside. Let's look at all. E, elevate the worship experience of young people through careful yet vivid and experiential expressions of creativity. So how are we making worship spaces where we're using all this different stuff that's out there? And I know his name is going to come to me. John Roberto was out a number of years ago, and I went along to his training thing. And he talked about, how do we do faith formation? Well, you put up resources, and there's all these resources out there, and you don't need to always create your own. You can just link to stuff that's out there. How are we drawing on all the resources that are out there for our worship? We don't have to create everything. Yes, there'll be stuff that we want to create, and that's good. But how are we drawing on stuff that's out there to help us to do our worship and elevate our worship experiences so that our young people are experiencing stuff? Because, again, the old model for church is we sit and sing, and then we stand and sing, we sit, we listen to someone talk, we stand and sing. And that's not the world that our young people live in. I remember rocking one person's world, I've probably said, in the Upper Hunter by going, well, where do we actually get together and sing in the world? Oh, at Hillsong. But other than Hillsong, other than a church thing, where do people get together and sing? And unless there's alcohol involved, there's probably not a lot of those places. So how are we doing the things that are relevant for our young people? That yes, singing the music's important, and it teaches us, and it provides emotion, and yes, concerts and stuff like that make music relevant for our young people. But where are other places? Where is our worship more than just the music? And yes, that's really hard at the moment because you want to do experiential stuff, and it's got to be COVID safe and all those sorts of things. And some of this we'll just have to lock in the back of our minds to be able to use in the future. A of create is allow young people to participate in creating worship experiences. So how are we getting young people involved in building our spaces and our worship? How are we getting them to, take part in that? Recently was talking with some other intergenerational leaders in Brisbane. We meet and chat online once a month since the Intergenerate conference. And I was sharing, we're trying to come up with some metrics and some measures of how do we know if we're doing intergenerational well? And one of them, someone suggests, was, well, who's crafting your services? And also who's reviewing your services? Do you have multiple generations crafting the service? And so how do we start to do that? How do we engage across the generations? And not just our young people, but the other generations in crafting our services. So it's not just the ministers doing it or whoever, but how is it more crafted and more across the ages? T, together. Draw your young people together into communities, not clubs. So how are we building community as opposed to here's something that you want to come to because it's the thing you like? It's always the thing that I hope we start to develop through a youth group, that we're actually building a community. We can put on great games and stuff, but you'll find somewhere else that does it much better because they've got a bigger budget. But how are we creating a community where, we support one another, we get along with one another, we want to help one another? How are we doing that in worship? How is it about community? And then E, expect God to move in creative ways. Don't limit him. So how do we sometimes just sit back and go, God, you've got it. Turn up. Do something. We go, okay, well, I had this plan, but God seems to be going in this direction, so let's go. That can be scary. So we need to create community. Creativity is the gift, so allow our young people to express in creativity. Reach them across the whole cover of life, all their emotions, all that stuff. Elevate the worship experience through experiential. Allow young people to participate in creating worship experiences. Draw together the young people into community, not clubs, and expect God to move in creative ways. So let's leave you with your questions to think about. 5 questions this week. I think we had 3 last week, so we're making up for the normal 4 by catching up on. So question number 1, do you teach and impart in various creative ways? So it's our challenge, not just youth group, Jaffa, Sunday school, KFG when we get back to those sorts of things, worship services. Are we teaching in various creative ways? Are we using different media? Are we using different things? Boys Brigade, all those sorts of things. Are we using these different things, or do we just do the same thing? Question 2, do your young people feel safe being creative? So do we have a space where young people can go, hey, I can do this. Let me express my creativity through this. I can do animation. Let me do that. I'm musical. Let me come and play. You know, growing up in my sort of late teenage years, I was lucky to have people, one of the guys at church had a keyboard and I was allowed to play it, and I might get, you know, part of the song I might be using 2 hands, but most of it would be 1 hand, and have the pianist playing, and they would cover it and I could just bumble my way through and learn what it meant to play in church. Do we have an environment where our young people can do that? Number 3, to what extent are young people part of your communal times of worship? So again, we're thinking, how do we do intergenerational? These are the questions. Are our young people part of that communal worship? And not just are they there in the room, but how are they part of leading? So it's been great through COVID to see Talia helping to sing and lead worship, and she's been doing that in face-to-face stuff. How does that become more important? More with her and with others. How do we see those faces? It's been great to see some of Esteban's family on the online stuff leading the singing. Keep that up. Number 4, do your times of worship reflect the breadth of our human experience? So do we allow all those feelings that we have to be there in worship, or do we have to put the mask on and go, oh, it's a happy day. Yay. Let's just join together and we'll all pretend everything's going well. Do we allow that space? Do we allow sort of a movement of feeling through service where we might doubt, but we come and then we worship God, and then we realise that God's with us? And Number 5, are you forming clubs or community? So what are we doing with Southside, and how are we growing that? Are we just trying to fit a model that, okay, we've got a target audience, we'll fit a model and they'll come along because they're interested in it? Or are we trying to build community? I think definitely we're trying to build community. COVID's helped and hindered that in various ways. But yeah, how are we building this community? Which means that, you know, some people may not get everything that they like, but we're building this community. We're building this sense. So through the Psalms, we're reminded, how are we cultivating our people? How are we allowing our young people and all people to have that creative response? Whether it be through allowing their creativity or using all the creative stuff around us to lead them through that journey of worship and faith. So that's so important. You know, we all know that when something's creative, it catches our attention. When it's not, well, we switch off. So that's our thing for today. We've still got a few more. I know you're wondering where we're headed next. I'm just not going to tell you. But we do have, what are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4 to go. 4 to go. So I think we're halfway. I think there were 8. I should really examine this beforehand and not leave you hanging like that. We've got 8, so we're halfway. We've done 4. So thanks for joining us. Again, if you've got any questions or comments, pop in the box and we'll try and come back to them, or chat with me during the week. If I've said anything of interest that you think others should hear, share it with them. Share it on your Facebook page. Tell other people to sit and watch. It's up all the time. We'll pop it over onto YouTube hopefully tomorrow and things like that. But thanks for listening. It's great to have you and hope to catch you soon. So See you later.